7 minutes past 8 Central African time. Thank you so much for staying with us. We're going to be kickstarting the show with a very, very important conversation, an interesting conversation. This is as we head out to the local government elections in November. The discussion around coalitions has been a really interesting one. South Africa has had or seen its share of coalition chaos, councils collapsing, alliances shifting, mayors coming and going. If you're in the city of Joburg, you know that more than anyone. And as I mentioned, with the local elections just a few months away, Parliament looks like they're pushing ahead with a coalition bill, which is aimed at bringing greater stability in municipalities. But My Vote Counts says the process essentially risks being rushed with proper public participation potentially being compromised. So we'll be looking at what's at stake here and looking at exactly what's the central concern from My Vote Counts. And we're joined by Noxolo Mfocwa, Advocacy Lead at My Vote Counts. Noxolo, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Slylo, and good morning to the viewers and listeners at home. Thank
There
you
we
so
go. Well,
much for having us here.
the pleasure is all ours. For the sake of time, I want to get right into the business of the day. Let's start with the central concern that you guys have as My Vote Counts. What's the objection here when it comes to this coalition bill? Is it the bill itself or the speed at which Parliament is trying to push it through?
So in terms of the coalition's bill, it's not a new issue. An earlier version was published for public consultation in 2024, and My Vote Counts is one of the various organizations that participated in that process. The legislation has therefore been under development for more than 2 years now, but the current pressure to pass the legislation before the municipal elections, we see it as not a result of a sudden emergency. We believe that the delays in the development and processing of the legislation cannot now be used to justify compressing constitutional requirements for parliamentary scrutiny and also meaningful public participation. So that is, I guess, the story behind it. The minister has publicly indicated that the government wants the legislation in place for coalition governments that will be formed after the elections, that are likely to be formed after the elections. However, Parliament's own legal advisors in this case have also reportedly raised concerns about the risks associated to undue haste. And yet the legislative process is moving forward against this very compressed electoral timetable. And that should make any or all of us in the country pay attention, because it's not a question simply about whether Parliament can physically process the bill before the 4th of November. The question is whether it can do so without compromising the quality of democratic participation that is required by our Constitution. And if our answer to that is a no, then the answer cannot simply be that the public will participate when we get around to opening the process, because by then the critical decisions about the timetable may have already been made. So the the Portfolio Committee on COCTA will be sitting today, having a briefing from the ministry, and also they'll be making the decisions about the modalities, timetables, and all of that. And what we are finding is that in this conversation about deciding how this very compressed time frame is going to work, the public is not privy to it. In fact, My Vote Counts had then, so the bill was introduced to Parliament last week, and when it was introduced, we wrote to the Portfolio Committee on COCTA, the National Assembly through the Speaker's Office, and the National Council of Provinces. And all we were demanding was clarity, and we still need 3 questions or 4 answered today in Parliament during the briefing process. So what we want to know is, what is the proposed parliamentary timetable for the public hearings? We want to know how much time citizens will have to review and comment on the bill. And we also want to know if Parliament can realistically meet its Section 76 constitutional obligations without any undue pressure to get this done. I guess, this comes from the space of, at this point, we're not even concerned with the substantive material of the bill, right? we want to ensure that the process itself is adequate enough to be able to meet the constitutional obligations of Parliament.
I want us to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to focus on the argument that government is making. They're essentially saying that South Africa needs a framework for coalition governments to work. And given the instability that we've seen in hung councils, especially in the last couple of years, it should be treated as such. So we'll look at that after this.
Salami breaking stereotypes, moving boundaries, joining hands. Salam Media. Humanity sets the agenda.
You know, it's a wonder how kids get anything done these days. With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best. That's why I choose to include Sunfoil, triple refined pure sunflower oil with every meal I make. Naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether I'm cooking, frying or baking, I know every dish will be a wholesome one. Sunfoil, now we're cooking.
Right now, over 150 million children around the world are orphaned, facing hunger, hardship and uncertainty. With Islamic Relief's Orphan Sponsorship Program, you can provide a child with access to education, nutritious food, essential healthcare, and a safe home. Your sponsorship is not just support, it's hope, security, and a brighter future. Be the reason an orphan child smiles again. Sponsor an orphan today with Islamic Relief.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042 203 1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
Are you banking with convenience, transparency, and flexibility? With Al Barakah Bank's transactional banking account, you can enjoy convenient everyday banking designed around your needs. Benefit from zero fees on point-of-sale transactions and manage your banking easily through Al Barakah's secure mobile banking app and internet banking platform. From everyday payments to managing your personal or business banking, Al Barakah makes banking simple, transparent, and convenient. Visit albarakah.co.za to learn more. Al Barakah, your partner bank. Al Barakah Bank Limited is an authorized financial services and credit provider.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
Welcome back. 16 minutes past 8 Central African time, and I'm still in conversation with Noxolo Mfocwa, Advocacy Lead at My Vote Counts, and we're discussing this new coalition bill and whether Parliament should be pushing ahead with the legislation ahead of the 2026 local government elections. And Noxolo, before we went on to that short break, I wanted to touch on the argument that government is raising. They're essentially saying that this is needed. The framework for coalition government has been long overdue, given the instability that we've been seeing in hung councils. Why shouldn't Parliament then be trying to get these rules in place before the 4th of November?
Thank you again, Slilo. So what becomes the issue is whether there will be a compromise, whether the timeline itself will compromise our right to public participation. So I didn't want to speak about the substantive matter of the bill, but I want to give you a few examples
Please.
of some of the stuff the bill covers that you would want to be able to comment on. So the bill brings up limitations on motions of no confidence. It brings up qualifications that should be required from anyone running for local government and filling various positions. There's a requirement for mandatory coalition agreements, which are likely to face significant logical and legal questions as you look at them. And there are also matters evidently relating to regulation that are not directly provided for in the text of the bill. There are shortcomings around the removal provisions that refer to municipal councils' rules of order, which don't exist at the moment, as these are bylaws. But the problem is that municipalities are not required to have such rules of order. And it seems many do not, right? If you look at the quality of the bill, the basic drafting of the bill currently is of poor quality. There are multiple issues with it. One is examples of the use of the word such as necessary, which occurs in relation to qualification, skills, and experience in summary, but it's not there in the text of the bill. So there are quite a lot of issues that we, as my vote counts agree with, some we don't agree with. And this is why we feel that all South Africans need to be given the space and time to go through this information and be able to comment from a place of knowledge and not just in a rushed process.
I want to maybe just get into your mind and see how you're viewing this sudden rush by government, because you mentioned that this bill is not new. I think it has been in development for the past 2-3 years. Why do you think that there's a sudden rush now? Do you think from maybe some political parties in parliament there's an almost making the bed because they can see already what the outcomes of the elections might look like for them?
I mean, it's possible. I don't want to put any indictment on anyone.
But we know.
However, it's possible. But if you speak about some of the initial issues that everyone had with the bill, how it was trying to oust out smaller political parties who become the kingmakers. Why specifically would you want to oust smaller political parties that have been voted for by citizens and remove them from the process of being able to form part of coalitions, right? On their end, they felt they're being held ransom by small political parties, but those political parties represent someone or some people. And if our democracy is to be as rigorous as it should be, then we shouldn't have a problem with the fact that someone representing a smaller percentage than a big political party is also there making decisions.
The 1%ers, as they like to call them. I want to look at what South Africans should be more concerned about. Is it the political instability itself, which we've suffered under, especially in municipalities like Johannesburg, or the possibility that Parliament could pass legislation that hasn't been properly scrutinized, and also public participation? You spoke about it a bit. Just given the limited time frame here, what would that look like in essence? Would it be public comment on the bill itself, or something else?
Okay, so I'll start by saying my vote counts does not seek to block coalition reform. I don't want anyone to misunderstand that. We believe that functional municipalities and accountable local government are essential for a functioning democracy. And while we have substantive concerns about certain provisions in the bill, and others, and we support others and have concerns with others, our immediate concern right now is the integrity of the process, right, through which this bill is being considered, because this legislation does have far-reaching consequences, and it cannot just be subjected to a rush process just to meet the election deadline. And so what I want to speak to is that the coalitions, this issue becomes bigger than just the coalitions bill, right? The coalitions bill is an immediate test of the principle that Parliament is supposed to follow. but the question extends beyond, far beyond coalition governance. It extends to what kind of democracy we want to see. Is it one where citizens participate only when Parliament feels like, okay, let's invite citizens, or is it one where citizens understand that democracy gives them an ongoing role to question, to scrutinize, and to influence the exercise of power? Is it a democracy where public participation is measured by whether a consultation technically happened, or one where we ask whether people are actually informed, have the time and the power necessary to participate meaningfully? Or is it one where civil society waits patiently for institutions to create opportunities for accountability? Or is it one where civil society helps to create those opportunities? And that's what we are trying to do as My Vote Counts right now. We're trying to hold Parliament accountable so that we ensure that these opportunities are created. Let it not be allowed, if there was any possibility, right, that meaningful public participation would be skimmed over, let it not happen anymore. So yeah, the coalition's bill will affect how municipalities are governed after South Africans have cast their vote. That makes the public conversation about the bill way too important to leave it entirely to Parliament. We believe South Africans deserve to know what is being processed. They deserve the time to understand it, and they deserve the opportunity to question it. And they deserve institutions that actively create those conditions. At this point, it hadn't been the case. The last time it was the case was 2024, and then the bill quickly was put through last week, and we had to write to Parliament, as I said, outlining the process that we did. And then only when we had written to them to question how public participation is going to be catered for, did they respond back to us. First, they responded and said, watch our social media pages. We're having a briefing on Thursday. And then we had to question that. We had to question that further and be like, but we want to know if our questions are going to be answered. Are they going to be part of the process? What's going to happen? What's going to be a process for the public to decide on the modalities of this process as well? Because we also should have a say as to these timelines and all of that. And they've currently assured us that there'll be time for that. But for now, the briefing that's happening this afternoon is for the portfolio committee to start the work. So we are looking forward to this afternoon to see what they'll decide on. And hopefully it won't close up the process to the rest of the stakeholders. I believe if they don't consider all these issues, then they technically open themselves up to legal action. And we know how that goes for South Africa. I don't think anyone wants to go straight to litigation. But when things like this happen, they're usually overturned in court.
Noxolo, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you giving us your time. I think we'll all wait for that press conference a bit later. And don't forget to follow the government on Facebook.
Yeah, please, South Africans should watch out for that briefing and take issue with what you need to take issue with. Take part in the processes you need to take part in. Just a fun fact before I go. I wanted to talk about timelines, because I was in an interview yesterday and people were asking me, what are the usual timelines? So in terms of the key timeline stages that have been seen in the past, on average, it takes about 168 days for a Section 76 bill like this one to go through the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces, and also the public participation and other processes required. And then for adoption and presidential assent, that usually takes an additional 96 days on average for the president
Half a year
to law.
So far, half a year.
Total time and commencement, it takes around 400 days for bills to get through Parliament. So just for people to understand, and this one is being pushed in, now it's less than 70 days, it's 69 days today, 69 days to the election. So I think there's cause for South Africans to look into that and possibly, try to, if you can, get on PMG, look at the bill already, start seeing what issues you see with it, because there's no way a process is being rushed this much if there's nothing sinister. Yeah.
And I think another issue could be setting precedents, for other bills that could be just passed. Well, we're going to leave it here for now. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and have a good one.
Thank you.
There we go. Going to take a quick break. We'll be back with you after this.